tonight's debate. The role of sheriff is important to the citizens of Porte because the level of authority the sheriff's position holds, their unique ability to protect the rights of the citizens, and the many capacities in which they serve to safeguard the county. We are honored to have the three candidates for the Porte County Sheriff joining us tonight. Democrat Al Ott, Republican John Boyd, and Libertarian Steve Osbourn. Each candidate brings their own experience and background to share with us today. Our goal is to better understand how these candidates will uphold the values of Porte County Patriots: freedom, Constitution, constitutional rights, fiscal responsibility, and government transparency. During tonight's debate, candidates will have the opportunity to tell you a little bit about themselves. After that, we will ask the candidates questions of importance to the Patriots and the citizens of LaPorte County. The same questions will be presented to all three candidates, and each will have 3 minutes to answer. At the end of the questions, each candidate will be allowed 1 minute rebuttal, if they choose so. We ask for your participation as an audience. And at the end of the Patriots questionings, audience questions to the candidates are welcome and encouraged. Tonight's debate will be moderated by Ron Miller.
I was going to clap at my head.
Thank you very much. Good evening. We have a lot of questions. There are a lot of you here, so we're going to get started. We're going to start by introducing the three candidates. We'll give each candidate 3 minutes to introduce themselves. And I didn't ask, do we have someone who's going to do timing? Okay, good. Why don't we start at the far end? We'll start with John Boyd. He is the Republican candidate for LaPorte County Sheriff. There's a microphone in front of you, John.
Good evening. Thank you for coming tonight and taking such interest in your sheriff's office. I'm honored to be here tonight with you and to be able to have an opportunity to introduce you and help you learn a little bit about the candidates and the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office. This is a very important election. We have so many issues here in LaPorte County, and I'm very eager to get to work and start addressing those issues. I'm very pleased tonight to have with me a great support network, and I have to introduce my wife, Amy, and my children, Megan and Nicholas. They're here with us tonight. Thank you for coming. I'm a lifelong resident of LaPorte County. I'm very fortunate. I'm going down a career path and seeking a goal that I've had for my entire life. When I was in 4th grade at Kingsborough Elementary School, my 4th grade teacher's husband, Larry Trueblood, and I'm honored that Larry is with us tonight in the audience, he influenced me more than probably any single person in my life other than my father. And at that age, in 4th grade, I knew that not only did I want to be a police officer, but I wanted to work for the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office, and I wanted to be sheriff someday. And that's when I began my journey. So I've been preparing myself my entire life, my entire professional career. I'm a graduate of LaPorte High School. I'm a graduate of Purdue University with a degree in criminal justice. In 1988, when I returned from Purdue University, I was hired by the LaPorte Police Department, where I served for 2 years. After 2 years, a position opened up at the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office, and my goals started to fall in place at that moment, and I was hired by then Sheriff Ken Layton as a patrolman with the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office. I've served as a deputy. I instituted the DARE program and the GREAT program in our LaPorte County schools. I served 17 schools in LaPorte County and western St. Joseph County. I've been a squad sergeant, I've been a detective sergeant, I've been a captain and chief of detectives, and currently my rank is major, where I'm third in command at the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office. In my position as major at the Sheriff's Office, I supervise and command all of our employees, approximately 170, and 10 or 12 part-time employees, and I also helped oversee our $8.4 million budget. I've got extensive leadership training, I've got extensive leadership experience, and I have command experience that dates back 14 years. I'm very close to my goal coming to fruition. I'm very honored to be here right now, and I consider myself so lucky because I have a job that I truly love, that I'm very passionate about. I know so many people that are in occupations that they don't look forward to going to work, they hate their job. Well, that's not me. I love my job so much that I'm frequently the first of our administrative staff to arrive in the morning, and I'm the last to leave at the end of the day. I don't make any overtime, and I frequently work 10, 12-hour days, sometimes 14, 16-hour days. And I do it because of the love of my job, and that's the same love that I will bring and enthusiasm and passion to the office of sheriff if I'm fortunate enough to be elected sheriff of LaPorte County. I thank you for coming here tonight and taking such an active interest in your sheriff's office. Thank you.
Our next candidate is Libertarian Steve Osbourn.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Steve Osbourn. I'm a very long-time resident of LaPorte County, although I did spend about 10 years away for a little while for work purposes. Had an opportunity to live in the Chicago area and also the Dallas-Fort Worth, gaining a lot of experience in management in the wireless industry on the technical side, technical operations, which included equipment and manpower and systems, critical systems that needed to keep working at all times. And I would emphasize that the sheriff's position is really an administrative position. And I have a lot of administrative experience managing men and equipment in multiple states at the same time and in multiple transmitting systems to keep hospitals and other emergency services going. And I've had a lot of accomplishments and have worked well and honorably in every position that I've held since I worked at the Sheriff's Department, which I did for 5 years. In my very young adult years, I spent 5 years as a dispatcher. In those days, there was not a 911 center when the dispatchers were actually members of the Sheriff's Department. And I can't tell you what a gratifying experience that was to work with those men and women and to work in that very needed service that is provided in our county. I also am married. I've been married for 38 years, have 5 children, 6 grandsons that are kind of spread out in various areas around the state and nearby state. I am particularly running as a Libertarian and on a Liberty platform because of the things that we've been seeing in the militarization of our police departments across the nation. We have been seeing a lot of it in the news and the alternate news. If you like reading alternate news on the internet, you've probably been aware of these things for a number of years. It's been building a lot. But it hasn't been until recently with all the recent troubles with Ferguson that it's really started coming out in the mainstream media, CNN, it doesn't matter whether you want to call it a progressive or Democrat news source or Republican, conservative, Glenn Beck. They're all talking about it, and it's like they're almost surprised at how far it's gotten in such a short amount of time, but it's actually been going on for some time. So I'm hoping that we get an opportunity to talk about that a little bit tonight, and I am very experienced and honorable in all the work that I've done in every place that I've worked. And I ask for your support, and I thank you for being here tonight and to the LaPorte County Patriots.
Our next candidate is the Democratic candidate for LaPorte County Sheriff, Al Lott.
Thank you, Ron, and excuse me, and thank you to the LaPorte Patriots for putting on this event. It's a good event for the public to come out, to hear what the candidates have to say and educate themselves for their vote. So for that, thank you for that. For those of you that don't know, my name is Al Lott, and I am the Democratic candidate for the sheriff's race here in the fall election. Caught a cold back in about a week and a half ago walking in a parade, so my voice is coming back slowly. At any rate, excuse me, I started my career at the Sheriff's Office in 1994. I'm 42 years old, and I will be completing my 20th year with the department at the end of the year. I've been married to my wife Jamie for 17 years, and we have 2 daughters, Riley and Ryan. That's not what I'm very, without them I couldn't be doing all the things that we do in this campaign. Great support staff. My mother and my father are here as well. I've got an extensive law enforcement family that again have been very supportive. During my career I've worked in multiple areas. I worked in the jail division where I started, and I worked there for 3 years. And then I worked in patrol division. I worked 11 years in the detective bureau, where I handled all major felony investigations, A, B, C, D, felonies, to include homicide cases, several of those. Very proud of being able to do that. It was a great experience, a great challenge. And currently I'm a sergeant supervising on the midnight patrol shift. during this entire campaign, I've talked about returning to civility. And that's so important to me. That's basically, in a nutshell, what people have asked. That means treating people like people, as law enforcement officers, as citizens of the community. I intend to rebuild the lines of communication within our own department first, then with outside police agencies and social service agencies, to include at the state and federal levels. Also with local law enforcement officials, we need to do a better job there. And then finally, you, the public, the lines of communication with the public. I think we need to really grasp what the public wants and expects and deserves. So that's some of my main issues that I have talked about during my campaign. We need a sheriff that can connect with the people in order to get this task done. Thank you.
First part of our presentation tonight, the LaPorte County Patriots prepared a number of questions, and we're going to present them to each of the three candidates. We'll do it on a rotating basis. The candidate will have 3 minutes to answer, and after all three candidates have answered, then if the candidates want to 1 minute rebuttal, they will have time for that as well. So we have a lot of questions to get to, and we're going to start with Steve Osbourn. If any of the candidates want me to repeat the question, because after 3 minutes, this one is a two-part, for example, you may need to catch up. We'll be glad to do that. Steve, the first question. History of publicly elected officials has shown from time to time the use of public funds, from missing money to the purchases of unneeded equipment. What will you do to curb the abuse of spending and internal theft? The second part of the question, what experience do you have managing a large budget, and how will this help you in dealing with the finances of the Sheriff's Department?
Well, the first part, micromanaging is very difficult to do. However, there's a lot of resources. A good manager knows where to go for his resources. And there are people I know that are still on the department that work in areas where they keep track of all this stuff. There's a lot of spreadsheets available. And the Libertarians, some of the Libertarians recently have been looking at the credit card statements of employees in the county, and it is a mess. And there are people who have credit cards that apparently they shouldn't have, and the expenses are really getting out of hand. So micromanaging from the standpoint of looking over these summaries and finding out where stuff is going is a big part of this job. It isn't out there chasing the criminals, which I'm glad to do if they need me. However, if they need me to do that, then the department's in worse shape than these two guys have been letting us know. So shame on them for not letting us. But I don't think things are that bad. I'm more than willing to help out in any way that I can. But in the management aspect, we have a lot of resources to draw on. The manager doesn't always have to know how to do everything himself, but he has to know where he can go to get the answer. Now, on the second part of the question about my experience, I worked for a company where I managed technicians and systems in about 11 states. The technical staff wasn't quite that large, but we had contractors who were also under my wing to ensure that these systems were working. And we would sit down and do budgeting. We had capital expenditure committee meetings that I was a part of every month, and we carefully tracked the expenses and the projects and the costs of these things, and very carefully stayed within the budgets, or if we had to make, something that was a little bit unexpected, we did things best we could with what we had, or we also made a good presentation. That's part of it. This is your police department. This is your protection. And it's not like in a business where you have the bottom line that you can see how well you're doing. It's how well you're protected and what kind of services we need to provide to you, and that is going to remain or improve under an Osbourn administration. And I'm glad to answer any questions considering this afterwards. I do have a lot of experience in management of these things and have performed honorably. I also might mention that I've been an honorable person all my life, and I have always paid my taxes, and we'll leave that for another time. Thanks.
How do you need the question repeated?
If I could, please.
Sure. History of publicly elected officials has shown from time to time the abuse of public funds, from missing money to the purchases of unneeded equipment. What will you be doing to curb the abuse of spending and internal theft? The second part of the question, what experience do you have managing a large budget, and how will that help you in dealing with the finances of the Sheriff's Department?
Well, the answer to the first question would be very simple. We're going to be accountable. I actually talk about that, the accountability, accessibility, and approachability, but the accountability would fit in that category. Everyone that's going to be working, myself included, probably at the first and foremost, be a leader, and your words and your words and actions will match. So we're going to be accountable. If there is somebody that's going to be, for lack of terms, doing improper things or unethical things, they'll be held accountable to that. If it means that we have to, those people get disciplined or fired or whatever, we'll do what we need to do. But again, it's the tax dollars, your tax dollars, my tax dollars, all of our tax dollars that are going to be being abused, and that's not what it's intended for. As an elected official, we have a higher standard as well. So, and the second question in regards to managing large amount of money. I'm a policeman. I was raised by a policeman. I've never made ungodly amounts of money. I'm a proud LaPorte County blue-collar worker. I work every day. I manage my money, and I think that's what we really want to think about. Managing money is probably the most important thing. I don't think we teach that to our young children. I try to teach that to my kids. Managing money, the principles that guide that, how you spend your money, is what's more important than how much we're spending, or how much we make, excuse me. So, in that regards, to managing an 8.4, give or take a couple $100,000, which sounds kind of funny to say, but an $8.4 million budget, it's the guiding principles of how you manage the money is, I think, what's more important. And I know I've done that a very good job in my own personal life. Jamie and I, we've raised two beautiful girls, and they're well clothed, we're well fed, we're healthy, and we pay our bills, just as I pay my taxes as well. And they come around quicker sometimes than what we need, but we do pay them, and that's part of our responsibility. So that's my experience with handling money. Thank you.
John, do you need the question repeated?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It's actually an excellent question, and this is something that I do every day. It's part of my responsibility. We do have an $8.4 million budget. That's something that I help to oversee. I have annual reviews that I go in front of with the Indiana State Board of Accounts, and to many in LaPorte County government, they quiver and shake when they hear that the Indiana State Board of Accounts is in town, in particular in LaPorte County government offices. I look forward to meeting with the State Board of Accounts, and I'm very proud of the fact that when I meet with the State Board of Accounts, they give me an exemplary review, because the meticulous record keeping that I do, that I always balance, and that I'm able to answer their questions without hesitation, show them where the money is, show them how we do what we do at the Sheriff's Office. This is something that I won't have to learn when elected, because I have that experience. An $8.4 million budget is a lot of money. It's your money, and you need to trust somebody with experience with that type of money. I've got that experience. Yet we do need transparency. You have a right to know how we're spending your money. And that's one of the frustrations that I have at the Sheriff's Office, that to this point, we haven't been transparent. I think we should have quarterly reviews with our review board, which is our county council, that oversees how we spend money. We should utilize our liaison, our county council liaison, who right now is Terry Garner, so he can see your book, so he can see exactly what we're doing and how we're spending their money, your money. It's very important that we report back to you and let you know what we're doing with the money that you provide us. You're our stakeholders, and we're not doing an adequate job of reporting back to you.
Looks like we have a lot of two-part questions tonight, so you might as well get used to that. We're going to start the next round of questions. 1 minute rebuttal. Do any of the three of you have anything additional you want to say, starting with Steve?
Well, let me just talk about honor for a minute. I don't know these two gentlemen real well, but I know them so far as to be honorable men, and I really like that. I'm glad I don't have the decision about who I'm going to vote for if I only had those two, because I couldn't make a choice. I know who I'm going to vote for. But I would like to say that, I don't even put a sign in for myself in my own yard,
got an extra one for you.
But I said this last time we were together, I've never had a moving violation. I'm going to drive away real careful. In 44 years of driving, I've never had a moving violation. On the Indiana tax form, I don't know, for the last 10 or 15 years or whatever it's been, where they've had on there, have you bought anything that you didn't pay sales tax on from, Amazon's now charging, but I filled that in. I don't know if the other candidates do, I don't know if you do, but I do. That's what a stickler I am for being sure that my finances are done honestly.
How would you like your vote?
I'm fine.
Okay, John? Okay. Next one again is a two-part question. So the next one after that, and I will start with you. The Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution is the part of the Bill of Rights that prohibits unreasonable searches and seizures and requires any warrant to be judicially sanctioned and supported by probable cause. The Supreme Court has justified the violation of our Fourth Amendment rights as long as you tell people and you're doing it. Do you feel the sobriety checkpoints actually do any good, and are they just a legalized Fourth Amendment violation? The second part of the question, if elected sheriff, would you continue these sobriety checkpoints?
Well, I myself have not worked ever one of those events. I have a small business that I have occupies my time on the other side, although now I've kind of stopped doing that, busy campaigning. Are they effective? I think they are effective. I do think they are effective. They, they're every night of the week right now. There's somebody that could be or potentially is driving impaired. And the intention is to curb that. I know they're well publicized. When you read them in the paper, they put them out there, and people know that they're out there. The fact that we're out there, and I think people need to understand that we just need to stop doing that type of activity. It's not safe for our children, it's not safe for me, it's not safe for any of us to be out on the road sober when we have other people out driving impaired. So yes, the answer to that question in a nutshell is yes, they are effective. And you're going to have to repeat that second one for us.
Second part of the question, if elected sheriff, would you continue these sobriety checkpoints?
Yes, I would. I think they are an effective tool. Although, like I said, I have not worked them, but they are effective to keep people from just doing negligent things and keep our roads safe. So, yes, I would continue that.
John, would you like the question repeated?
Please.
First part of the question, the First Amendment to the United States Constitution is the part of the Bill of Rights that prohibits unreasonable searches and seizures and requires any warrant to be judicially sanctioned and supported by probable cause. The Supreme Court has justified the violation of our Fourth Amendment rights as long as you tell people when you're doing it. Do you feel the sobriety checkpoints are actually doing any good, or are they just a legalized Fourth Amendment violation? Second part of the question, if elected sheriff, would you continue the sobriety checkpoints?
That's a very good question. I was the DUI task force commander for all of LaPorte County for approximately 10 years, so I've got a lot of background when it comes to that and a lot of insight as well. The Supreme Court has laid out the parameters for the sobriety checkpoints, so who would know better their constitutionality than the Supreme Court itself? I do believe that they are constitutional as long as the guidelines that the Supreme Court set forth are followed. However, with that being said, if elected sheriff and as former DUI task force commander, I think they're effective in one regard. They're effective in that they're a deterrent. They're not effective in removing impaired or intoxicated drivers from our roadways. And I know that because traditionally in LaPorte County, we utilize saturation patrols. Saturation patrols are areas that we identify where we have a high frequency of operating while intoxicated arrests, operating while intoxicated related crashes, and so we'll go and we'll saturate a particular area. Also places where there's great likelihood for there to be drinking. If there's a festival where perhaps there's a concert or there's a beer garden, we would go and saturate that particular area. I know from doing statistical review, there's no better way of removing drunk drivers from the roadway than to saturate an area and remove the drunk drivers after we stop them from probable cause that we've established due to their driving behavior. I think from a deterrent standpoint, I know that when we put out word and we're required by the Supreme Court to announce that we're having sobriety checkpoints, that's a huge deterrent. However, when you look at the statistics and you compare how many arrests we make from a DUI checkpoint, we have very, very few. But when we have sobriety, when we have saturation patrols that go out, we have a great number of DUI arrests. Plus, I also think from a manpower standpoint and how much bang we get from our buck, when we've set up a sobriety checkpoint, it's extremely labor intensive, therefore it's extremely expensive. We can put out a lot more officers using saturation patrols than if we were to use one single DUI checkpoint. So the answer to the question is absolutely not. I would not be in favor of it, and in fact I would talk to our prosecuting attorney as well. I just don't think it's a wise use of manpower, and I don't actually think that we're removing many, if any, drunk drivers.
Steve, would you like to repeat the question?
Yeah, go ahead, please. Just so it's fresh in the mind of all of us. I think I know what I want to say, but let's...
Okay. The Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution is the part of the Bill of Rights that prohibits unreasonable searches and seizures and requires any warrant to be judicially sanctioned and supported by probable cause. The Supreme Court has justified the violation of our Fourth Amendment rights as long as you tell people when you're doing it. Do you feel the sobriety checkpoints are actually doing any good, or are they just a legalized Fourth Amendment violation? And the second part of the question, if elected sheriff, would you continue to employ sobriety checkpoints?
All right, first of all, remember I'm a libertarian. Okay, so when I give you my answer here, understand the philosophy of liberty that started this country. And the sobriety checkpoints, the only thing that I've been through once was a checkpoint where they were checking for the winterization of your car to see if you were all ready. And I was a member of the department at that time, and I remember I knew the state policeman that waved me over. And I remember I was a young man, so I wasn't as politically objectionable to such things as I am now. But I remember being greatly incensed inside that they would pull me over. I had somewhere to go, and it really upset me. And so I'm looking at the liberty angle of it, that it's just not right to just detain people. If you get detained in something like that, ask them if you're being detained. If you're not being detained, technically you have the right to leave. So that's something to remember when this happens. So that being said, there's probably some other things on the Fourth Amendment that we'll get into a little bit later on. It's being quite abused here in recent years. And unless we start being aware of this and start asserting our control to change things, it's going to get worse, and it's going to get worse. So we're going to have to wake up a little bit and figure out how to put a stop to some of these things. This is just another way to let us see who's in control out there.
Yes.
Who that we have to obey.
Yeah.
And that's my opinion of it. Now, they will not occur if I'm sheriff, but we will pull you over and take you in if you are driving impaired. But I think that we'll find more being on the road, observing all traffic, or I like John's answer, being in a particular area, when there's an event or something going on. That is a good use of manpower and a good use of protection for us to keep these people off the road, get them off the road. I've seen people out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon that are weaving all over the place. And we just can't have that. It's too dangerous for all of us. It doesn't matter if you're a police officer in a squad car. I rode with a man once, one of the sheriff's deputies, being on the sheriff's department. We had the opportunity to go out and ride. We did a lot of things that the dispatchers today in the 911 center, they don't get to do. We were on midnights and we were sitting at a red light, and at about 70, 80 miles an hour behind us comes this car that's just about going to hit us as we're waiting for the red light. He swerves at the last second, goes through the red light, and yes, he was smashed pretty good. So patrol, I think, is the best way to get those people off the roads.
Yes.
How do you have a 1 minute vote? John? Steve, anything more?
I do, yes. I'm a libertarian, so yes, I
You have another
am.
minute.
And I just ran across this today. I'm going to hold it up. I don't think you're going to be able to see it, but Indiana becomes a police state. Supreme Court overrules Fourth Amendment. Now, I just ran across this today, so I haven't had much time to research it, but it was from 2011. The Indiana Supreme Court basically said that in a 3-2 decision, Justice Stephen David, writing for the court, said if a police officer wants to enter a home for any reason or no reason at all, the homeowner cannot do anything to block the officer's entry. So That's correct. But now I don't know if that's gone to the U.S. Supreme Court or not, and something that I need to research a little bit more. I kind of disagree with John here a little bit. The U.S. Supreme Court basically asserted their right that they're the final answer. The Constitution does not give them that authority. Actually, the 10th Amendment gives us the authority to assert what's constitutional and what isn't.
Amen.
Another two-part question. Stories of police using excessive force, being trigger-happy, quick to shoot the family animal, and using police resources to publicly embarrass people, as well as overuse of county vehicles for personal use, are some of the stories being told on social media. Give a brief explanation of what you plan to do to improve these conditions and public perception of the LaPorte County Police Department. How do you plan to work with the union to ensure that the officers accused of misconduct are handled appropriately?
Well, I think the answer to that question comes down to leadership. If you have strong leadership and you set out expectations for those that are under your span of control and in your command, those employees will fall into place. They'll know what is to be expected. You also set a standard just by the way you live your life, the way you have worked your career, and I think you should be a role model and a mentor for other officers as well. But certainly you need to set clear expectations for those that work within the department. I'm very fortunate that I've not seen those abuses of power that you were talking about here at the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office. There's always the question of people using their police cars off duty. And the county council makes it clear to us that that's part of our salary. And in fact, the sheriff and the council and the commission have always encouraged our officers to drive their cars off duty. Well, there are certain limitations to that, of course, because it's always an extra officer that's out there that's available to answer calls. In fact, I can think of many times during the course of my career, my nearest backup was 20 minutes away. And if it hadn't been for an officer in a take-home car, they came and actually bailed me out and was able to be my backup, my primary backup officer. I can think of times my phone is rung at 3:30 in the morning, and it's the dispatch center saying, we're really getting it handed to us right now. We have an alarm at 39 in the state line. I live in Heston. Can you respond because you live so close? And I hop in my take-home car and I respond to that call. So there is a give and a take when it comes to that. I think that when there is an allegation of an abuse of power, it needs to be immediately investigated. It needs to be investigated by the administration, and if it looks like it could be something criminal in nature, it immediately needs to be handed over to an independent agency, say for instance the Indiana State Police, so they can make an unbiased opinion and do an unbiased investigation, see if it's worthy of criminal charges. Sometimes it may just be someone getting a little overboard, but our officers are in harm's way each and every day. And with the advent of social media and handheld cameras, oftentimes what we see on YouTube or on Facebook or Twitter is just a little snippet of what really happened. And so I think you need to have the totality of the circumstances. And I don't think we should use social media as a barometer as to how we're doing our job. What should be the barometer of how we're doing our job is to get out in the community, get out in the individual communities and find out from them how the public thinks that we're doing our job and what suggestions that they may have.
The question, two-part question. Stories of police using excessive force, being trigger-happy, quick to shoot the family animal, and using police resources to publicly embarrass people, as well as overuse of county vehicles for personal use, are some of the stories being told on social media. Give a brief explanation of what you plan to do to improve these conditions and public perception of the LaPorte County Sheriff's Department. Second part, how do you plan to work with the union to ensure the officers accused of misconduct are handled appropriately?
Well, the social media part, yes, we shouldn't depend on social media, but it does have its place. It can flag us. I had an interview once for a job, and I'll never forget what this interviewer asked me. He said, what do you think the mark of a good technician is? I've been a radio frequency technician most of my life. And he wanted to know what the mark of a good technician was. Well, I can't tell you what my answer was. I've long forgotten that. But he said what he thought was the mark of a good technician is someone who could recognize that there was a problem. People don't complain for nothing. These things aren't on the social networks for nothing. There's something to them. We may not have the whole story, and I agree with that, but here's a report that if you have any interest at all, you should take a look at it. It's done by the ACLU, and I know I'm not a big fan of the ACLU either, but they do try to defend the Bill of Rights. And this is some research that they did. They sent out questionnaires to about 200 and some police departments, only about 100 and some responded, but they wanted to know the uses of the equipment and the special weapons and tactics that were going on. And this is full of horror stories of not just dogs getting shot, but people. There's one in here of a SWAT team that went to arrest, had a warrant for a person. They found him in the front yard of the house. Didn't have a warrant for anything else, but if they could find him in the house, they were to go in the house. They decided to go in the house anyway. The old grandfather that was in there followed all their instructions, laid on the floor, put his hands above his head, and accidentally got shot by one of the M15s or AR-15s that the officer was carrying, and was killed. And that story repeats all across the nation. And it's really coming to light here now with a lot of these things, so we need to get a grip on some of these things. Now, I'm sorry, the...
Second part of the question, how do you plan to work with the union to ensure that the officers accused of misconduct are handled appropriately?
Well, I'm hoping, first of all, that we don't get to that point, that we have them trained enough that, yes, they have these military instincts. They're coming out now with this training that they're warriors. And we end up being the enemy in those things. So we have to try and constrain them a little bit so that we don't get to that. But I have worked with unions before, not a lot, minimally, but I sympathize with their positions as well and the dangers that these guys face on the road every day and even at home.
If you could, sure. Stories of police using excessive force, being trigger happy, quick to shoot the family animal, and using police resources to publicly embarrass people, as well as the overuse of county vehicles for personal use, are some of the stories being told on social media. Give a brief explanation of what you plan to do to improve these conditions and public perception of the LaPorte County Sheriff's Department. Second part, how do you plan to work with the union to ensure that the officers accused of misconduct are handled appropriately?
The people in here that know who I am, I'm not a big fan of the social media world. I don't have a Facebook account. I wouldn't know how to get on it. I don't do Twitter. I don't have an email. I pride myself with personal contact with people. That holds a person accountable just by that. A handshake can go a long way. So the social media, I'm not totally against it. It doesn't work for me in my life. It's proven to me day in, day out by talking with people, I mean not you, but people in the public that tell me how much drama is involved with it. And as an official that works for all of the public, again, I've said this earlier, we need to be accountable to you, and we need to be held at a higher standard. So with all that put in place, I'm not a big fan of it. I realize I live in 2014, and it's here to stay. It's a great tool if you want to communicate with friends in Arizona and things of that nature, but it just seems like we abuse that, everything that's good in the world these days. It's an unfortunate thing, but nonetheless, it is occurring. So as far as some of the other things that were referred to, I think it was quick shooting or I'm not sure of the verbiage.
Quick to shoot the family animal, using police resources to publicly embarrass people, and the overuse of county vehicles for personal use.
Just addressing the quick to shoot the animals, I'll agree with Major Boyd on that. I'm not aware of that occurring with our department. You hear of things in the news and in the media where law enforcement may have acted inappropriately or appropriately. Again, I'm not going to comment on whether right or wrong without not knowing, but I do know as a firearms instructor with the academy, we are held again to a higher standard. There's a use of force a force continuum that we are held to for every time that we would discharge our weapon. So, speaking here and staying on focus for LaPorte County, because that's why we're here, I'm not familiar with it. I've never seen it in my 20 years. So, in that respect, I really don't, again, I'll agree with Major Boyd on that, so. Which is a tribute to the men and women that work for our department. We have professionals here and they're doing a good job, so. And the second part of it, I'm sorry?
How do you plan to work with the union to ensure that the officers accused of misconduct are handled appropriately?
Again, that's from the first question we had, it goes back to the accountability. Holding ourselves to a better standard than the general public. We need to conduct ourselves appropriately and, again, hold ourselves accountable. Thank you.
It's not so much as a rebuttal, it's just a point of reference. The sheriff's office, we are not unionized, we don't have a union, so it's not that the sheriff has to work with the union when it comes to any disciplinary matters. He actually needs to work with his command staff and his supervisory staff, and also the merit commission as well. There are certain things that the sheriff can do by code as far as discipline is concerned, and there are other things than the merit commission, which is an independent board of civilians that make up the merit commission that would oversee hiring, firing, and any certain levels of discipline.
Stephen, I guess you'd like another 60 seconds?
Yes, and maybe a little longer with the permission of these guys, because I want to defend the take-home car program. I want to relate an experience that they probably don't know about, because they're too young. This is a failure, but it also shows you why we need this take-home car program. Many years ago, when I was a dispatcher back in about 1980, 81, we had 2 robberies up at the state line where you were just referring. It was Purple Martin gas station at that time. There was a murder occurred at each one. On the second one, that occurred 1 week later, we actually had a suspect that we had information about where he was going, and we had to chase him, and we had to call out everybody. Unfortunately, there had been a death in the LaPorte City Police Department, and all the squad cars were getting washed by the trustees. Everybody had to race into the sheriff's department to get their cars. Now, this sounds like a failure. When we really needed it, it wasn't there, but it's a good demonstration of why that program is really necessary. It took all night and better to get that guy off the streets that committed 2 murders. And I get upset every time I hear this on sound off, somebody belly aching about the take-home car program.
How do you like another 60 seconds?
In regards to the take-home policy, there are pros and cons, as it's been brought up here. I myself, I choose to, I've got a business on the side. I have my own personal vehicle, my wife has her own personal vehicle, and so we choose to do that. Drive our vehicles. As I see citizens here, and so you can appreciate having a vehicle where you don't have to fill that tank and fill that tank and fill that tank, and with the dollars that are, or the gas prices are where they're at, it seems like the dollars just flow out of the pocket, so I understand that. And I can appreciate everything that you're doing, but we choose that. But the take-home policy does have some benefits, so we pretty much laid them out already, so I agree with that, but there are pros and cons. But I choose to try to be like the people here, because I'm just like you. Thank you.
Okay, Steve, we'll start with the next question, and surprise, surprise, a 2-part question. This one is a small book, so it's going to take a minute.
That's right on my mind.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Supreme Court of the United States has ruled that the right vests in individuals, not merely collective militias, which also ruling that the right is not unlimited and does not prohibit all regulation of either firearms or similar devices. Many attempt to infringe on the Second Amendment have been attempted and are still being threatened today by the federal government. If by some strange chance of liberal lunacy their demanding succeeds, what side will you choose? The U.S. Constitution and a right to defend ourselves, or an unjust federal law? Second part of the question, after Hurricane Katrina, police went house to house disarming the citizens. This is a major concern for many citizens. Removing the right to defend themselves at the time when they may need it most. In the event of a natural or man-made disaster, would the people of LaPorte County have to be concerned that they will be disarmed as the people of New Orleans were?
Right, I'm going to say something here that may not be very fair to these two gentlemen. So as I start, you might have a tendency to nod your head. Don't do that. I'm just going to be fair here because it won't work out for you. I think these guys are good soldiers. And I really worry about that in incidents just like the question that's been asked. You know, are they going to be, like I heard in the movie once, a doggy on the dashboard? Yes, Department of Homeland Security. Yes, FBI. We're going to go out, we're going to get the guns. They're good soldiers. I don't know. Now, I will not have my department doing that. Now, there may be some repercussions from that. You're going to have to decide, do you want those repercussions? Or do you want a police department that's going to stand up for you and stand by that Constitution and let you keep your weapons?
Yes.
So that's something that each of you will have to decide. And you are going to have to decide how much of the Constitution you're willing to support. And by the way, I think that we all have an oath to support the Constitution. I had a chance to talk to a DC Circuit judge once after hearing him speak. This is, about one step below the Supreme Court. And I asked him, Bush was doing signing statements at the time, and I said, since a new citizen has to raise his hand and swear to uphold the Constitution, that inures to me as being born here. That's automatically my oath, is it not? Can't I then go and defend the Constitution and file a lawsuit against such things? And he real quick said no, because judges make a quick decision like that. But then he just stared at me. He said, but that's interesting. So I think we all have an oath to defend the Constitution. Now, I've written a number of articles. If you go to my webpage, you'll see links to them. One of them I state, it's hard to defend the Constitution when there's a howitzer pointed at your house and they're asking for your guns. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know what I'm going to do as sheriff. I'm not coming to your house to get it, if that's the case. I can't speak to these guys. I hope they will say the same thing. But I also know they're good soldiers, so I don't know. I don't know where we're going to be with that. I'm sorry, the second part was?
Second part is, in the event of a natural or man-made disaster, would the people of LaPorte County have to be concerned if they will be disarmed as the people of New Orleans were?
All right, I'm going to tell you quickly an experience I had some years ago, not with this prosecutor's office, the outgoing one, but the one that was before that. In a Libertarian meeting, I mentioned to him that there were some internet rumors that some people in northern Indiana had been told by the federal government that we needed to be ready for an influx of people from Chicago, and I asked him, what are we going to do if that happens? And he said, we're on our own. So, Second Amendment.
I'm going to shorten this out, but I'll read it again. Many attempts to infringe on the Second Amendment have been attempted and are still being threatened today by the federal government. If by some chance the change that they are demanding succeeds, what side will you choose? The U.S. Constitution and a right to defend ourselves, or an unjust federal law? The second part, in the event of a natural or man-made disaster, would the people of LaPorte County have to be concerned if they will be disarmed as the people of New Orleans were?
Well, I am a proud U.S. citizen. I'm a proud state of Indiana citizen. I took an oath 18 years ago to obey or to enforce laws. As sheriff, I will continue that. And I will obviously want my men and women working each day to continue that as well. I firmly believe anybody that goes into an office, sheriff, a county councilman, state legislators, they go into office to do the right thing. I don't know if that is really truly the case, but in my mind, that's what I believe they do. So, with that being said, if they so choose downstate, in this state of Indiana, to put that into law, I will have to obey that, and I will have to enforce those laws. Now, in my 11 years in the Detective Bureau, I can tell you that there has been times when I have not agreed with the law. There are times, there's several policemen in here, retirees. I think they all probably would agree with me at certain times in their careers that we may not have agreed with the law. But it comes down to integrity. We take an oath. So when we take that oath, I feel that we need to enforce the laws. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
John, I'll give you the shortened version also. Many attempts to infringe on the Second Amendment have been attempted and are still being threatened today by the federal government. If by some strange chance the changes they are demanding succeeds, what side will you choose? The U.S. Constitution or our right to defend ourselves, or an unjust federal law? The second part, in the event of a natural or man-made disaster, would the people of LaPorte County have to be concerned that they will be disarmed as the people of New Orleans were?
I took an oath when I became a police officer. I raised my right hand, and my oath was to defend the Constitution of the United States and defend the Constitution of the state of Indiana, and that's what I've done, and that's what I will continue to do. Part of my responsibility at the Sheriff's Office, 5 days a week, sometimes 6 if I work a little on the weekends, is to do our handgun permitting. I'm a very pro Second Amendment individual, and this is where it really is important. It comes into play, and I've got to make some decisions as to whether or not we grant a handgun permit to somebody. In the state of Indiana, there are rules and regulations concerning whether we permit someone for a handgun. Somebody's been convicted of a felony, they're a violent felon, we deny them, whether they apply or not. It's not their right any longer. They forfeited their right when they were convicted of a felony. Likewise, if somebody has been diagnosed by a mental health professional that they're unfit to be allowed to carry a handgun, we do not permit them. And that's a decision that I have to make, armed with information that's been presented to me. And that's not a job that I take lightly. That's a tough decision, because I always have to face the person who I just denied their handgun permit, and I have to explain to them why. But sometimes we have greater responsibility to the mass than we do the one individual who's applying. It's a tough decision that we have to make, yet that's a decision that I'm entrusted to make. I took an oath to defend and uphold the Constitution of the state of Indiana and the United States of America, not to support the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, or the FBI, or the Bureau of Land Management, or the IRS, some of the other organizations that, in my opinion, are out of control. Groups like the FBI and the ATF can be wonderful resources when we call upon them and we need them. And they've been great partners for us here in LaPorte County. They've been able to give us technology and manpower and technology when we haven't been able to afford that on our own. We lack the expertise or the resources for that. I don't think that we have anything to worry about if we have another incident like we had in New Orleans. I don't think you're going to find us going door to door removing guns. And as sheriff, I certainly wouldn't be a party to that. I know as major at the sheriff's office, I wouldn't be a party to that. We have a lot more important issues to do than going door to door removing guns. I think that's kind of a scare tactic, and I think that just riles people up, and that's why there's some mistrust going on, because there's misinformation about what's going on in our country today. But again, I swear to uphold the Constitution, not the special interest groups or not certain elements within the federal government.
I just want to reiterate that the Constitution of the United States is the ultimate law of the land. It's not anything else. It's the ultimate law of the land is the Constitution. And I read a story some few years ago that the federal government, some agencies of the federal government, were trying to get some of the larger congregations, preachers, to understand that when martial law came, not yet, but when martial law came, it would be up to them to help get the guns from the citizens. And that they should follow Romans 13 that says that you need to be honorable to the powers that be. The law of the land is the Constitution of the United States, not whoever it is that's knocking at our doors demanding that we do this. So yes, some of what these gentlemen have said are true. There are laws, but there is the ultimate law of the Constitution of the United States and our inalienable rights as well. We forget those.
Just real quick, in regards to the Second Amendment, you know, we can get real long-worded with everything that we're going to talk about here. I am an NRA life member. I believe in the right to bear arms. Again, it goes back to the pride of being just a citizen in this great country. So I am an NRA life member. But with that being said, again, I talked about coming from a law enforcement family. Weapons have always been, in my mind, used for personal protection and nothing more, really. Hunting for recreational, other than Other than that, the lack of training when possessing a firearm is the real concern that I have, and people that are going to possess them. I don't know if we can control that, but it seems like something that we need to look at and look into.
John?
Al hit on an interesting point, and I do believe in the right to bear arms, because I have been witness in the last 16 months here in LaPorte County to 2 incidents where homeowners were able to successfully thwart a home invasion because they were armed. In one case, it ended up where the suspect was dead. It was because he broke into someone's home, he was armed with a deadly weapon, and the homeowner was able to stand his ground, and he was able to preserve his own life in that situation. So that's why I feel that it's so very important. I see what the St. Joseph County Sheriff's Department has done recently, our neighbors to the east, where they're providing training for people that are first-time firearms owners, in particular handgun owners. I think that that's something we should do. We have one of the nicest ranges in all of the Midwest. We have some of the best firearms instructors in all of the state of Indiana and the Midwest, and I think we could utilize them to help put on citizens academies where they could come in and familiarize themselves with weapons that they can ultimately use to preserve their life, and that they need to know how to function them when they're in their home.
Yes.
Now we finally have a question that only has a single part, so. Issue. The U.S. Constitution is a set of rules intended on telling government what its limits are. There have been lawmakers who insist on overstepping their authority and making laws that are in contrast to the founding document. Most constitutionalists believe that an unconstitutional law is not a law. If such a law were passed, would you be obliged to enforce it? I think we've already answered that, but if you want to respond to it.
Can you repeat it again? I'm sorry.
If such a law were passed, would you be obliged to enforce it?
I've answered it, yes. Again, when I took the job to be a policeman in the state of Indiana, I took an oath. So if law gets put into place, I will enforce it, yes.
John, I'll read it again. The U.S. Constitution is a set of rules intended at telling government what its limits are. There have been lawmakers who insist on overstepping their authority and make laws that are in contrast to the founding document. Most constitutionalists believe that an unconstitutional law is not a law. If such a law were passed, would you be obliged to enforce it?
Well, it's difficult as a police officer to determine what's constitutional and what's not, what is not constitutional. And I'm not so sure that it's our job to interpret the law. However, whether it's constitutional or not, I think it's important that we have a good working relationship with our county attorney and our prosecuting attorney as well. And over the course of my career, we have had several laws that were kind of head scratchers where we weren't really quite sure, so we did defer to our prosecutor or our county attorney. Sometimes the Attorney General of the state of Indiana, and we've said, we're not quite sure how to interpret this. What's your take on it? So I think if there was ever a question as to the constitutionality, I think that we should fall back on the experts and ask them how they feel and get a ruling from them before we proceed. I would always put it into abeyance until we were 100% sure that we were on good, sound legal grounds.
Steve? Would that be repeated?
No, I think I have it. Yes, we are bound as police officers, which I'm not right now, but will be if elected, to obey the law, to uphold the law and the Constitution. But yes, very definitely, the sheriff has a duty to, now maybe not for every little thing that has already been set and has already been well in practice and there's no complaints or questions about, but yes, if we get a no-knock warrant and it's for $50 worth of drugs, this happened down in Georgia where a young boy, a flash grenade was thrown into his crib, burned the side of his face, and has taken almost $1 million worth of treatment. Do we honor the Fourth Amendment in cases like that for $50 sale of drugs or something and going with the full force? That's not the way that things should be done, and that's where we're headed. And this report I referred to earlier has a lot of incidents like that. So a sheriff has a duty to you to be sure that something is really constitutional. I don't care if the court says, hey, you can't stop us from coming in even if we're making a mistake. I mean, that's just flying in the face of the Constitution. So a sheriff's going to have to make some decisions there, some executive decisions, some administrative decisions, but decisions that affect you and his officers So I don't want any of the guys getting hurt either. I don't want you feeling defenseless, and I don't want them feeling like they can't enforce and do their job because of fear of retribution or whatever. And it's getting to the point now, across this nation, where the police officer is losing credibility in the face of the people. And that has got to stop. And I am still, even though it's been a number of years since I've been in the department, I still have a great love for law enforcement. And I don't like to see these things happening. And these things are happening because of some of it getting out of control. And there's only one way to prevent that, and that's to start reining in the things before they happen here. Yes, we can say it'll never happen here, but I'm sure that there's a lot of people across this country that have been saying that. And these reports are full of incidents like that, that I'm sure that people thought it would never happen there.
Now, another, John? You need another 60 seconds, Steve? No. Okay. All right, next question. John, and another single question, all right.
Hold on just a second.
Okay,
Thank you.
changing the tape.
Do we need to take a 5-minute break?
Candace, want to take a break, or what do you think?
Can I get another water? I'm running out. Sorry. Someone has to.
Another bottle of water?
You guys want to take a 5-minute break?
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you. We'll be back.
Would you like these 3-part questions?
And we'll start with John Boyd. The Department of Land Management showing up with a SWAT team and snipers to collect late taxes. The EPA restricting farms from selling goods. The EPA raiding town dinner thrown by a grateful farmer for serving unauthorized food and forcing the food to be thrown out. Just a couple of examples of the many multi-layer federal agencies that have created laws without Congress and the ridiculous behavior they are capable of. What are your views on whether a county sheriff can defend against an ever-intrusive federal government? You have 3 minutes for that one, John.
Okay, that's a question that's really important to me because I like to fashion myself as an environmentalist. My wife, my family, we love to travel out west, and I see the abuses that the Bureau of Land Management has perpetuated out west. I see how the IRS is out of control. I see how the EPA is out of control. Some of their edicts, they come in and what they do to these small towns, what the Bureau of Land Management has done to some of the ranchers, they're absolutely out of control. They make up their own rules as they go along. I wouldn't be a party to that. I cringe when I see what's going on out west with the Bureau of Land Management, in particular what happened out in Nevada, in Utah recently. I would not be a party to it. I wouldn't support it. I wouldn't send my troops out there to be a part of that, to get involved in that. In fact, I would do everything I could to dissuade the federal government from coming in. But I will tell you this, in defense of the federal government, we have an excellent working relationship here in Northwest Indiana. I don't see any abuses here in Northwest Indiana. I've not been witness to it. And whenever we call them for resources, technology, manpower, they've always been Johnny on the spot, and they've been great. And there have been a lot of things we haven't been able to do without their assistance. But if I see something that's wrong, I'm going to stand up and tell them that I don't agree with it, and we're not going to be a party to it. We're not going to get our people involved. I like what happened out west, where the local sheriffs got together and encouraged them to pack their bags and move along. And it's unfortunate the sheriff had to be the mediator in that situation, but who helped to resolve it all? It was the local sheriff. Why? Because the sheriff was respected, and he was a well-known member of the community, and he treated his community as though they were important, and he valued their input, he valued their citizenry. And he's almost like family out there, and I think that that's something that we need to return to here in LaPorte County as well.
I'll repeat the last line. What are your views on where a county sheriff can defend against an ever-intrusive federal government?
Well, as John said, cooperation with them is a beneficial thing because there's a lot of resources there that we can draw on and get help with certain things. On the other hand, I don't want them coming to you and trying to push some of these ridiculous things like happened in Michigan here not too long ago. People that had milk that was fresh from the cow, and they were made to dump it all out because of the federal regulations on such things. Apple cider just doesn't taste the same anymore that's like you used to be able to get. So yes, they kind of are overstepping their bounds. And I would rather see us defend you. If we can't keep them from doing these things, then it's going to require our support for you to be there to try and either be sure that they don't get out of hand or, you know, defend you against encroachments that they have no business making. But this administrative law stuff that's been around for many years now, the sheriff can't change any of that. But you guys with the live hearts, for those of you who are here because you're not decided, not that the others don't have, but I recognize that I have friends here, they have friends here. You know, in some cases we're preaching to the choir here in our own respective choirs. But it's going to be up to you to hold the feet of our legislators to the fire. We've got to start doing that, or these things are going to just get worse and worse. The sheriff and these departments can't handle all these things all the time by ourselves. We have to have the assistance of you getting involved with the legislators to say enough is enough. There is no administrative law, it's all constitutional law. Take these things out of the administrative courts and let's pass laws that are in accordance with the Constitution instead of all this administrative things that they just decide what, you know, and you can get different answers from different agents, as you well know with the IRS or any of these agencies. You won't get the same two answers if you talk to two different people with the same situation. So yes, we can be a resource, but it is good to know that they're planning something. So we don't want to thoroughly upset the apple cart here in cooperation with them because that's good information to have. But if we get too abusive and stand against them, that may not give us the opportunity as a law enforcement body to know what's coming down the pike. So there's going to be a real balance there. Yes, the Constitution needs to be defended, but yes, we need to be able to do our jobs to protect you by having this information that something is coming.
Al, the last part of the question is, what are your views on where a county sheriff can defend against an ever-intrusive federal government?
I kind of touched on this already in my opening statement. My campaign is about working with the agencies that are out there. We're all here, we are all citizens, and we all need to work together to make it a better place, in general speaking. I have my place on earth. I know I have my profession that I've chosen. And you know, you come to the different forums and you get asked different questions. And my biggest concern about that is that we get off base. And I respect the question, but my personal opinion about having everybody here is talking about LaPorte County. What is important in LaPorte County right now? Each day when I work midnight shift, I go to calls where domestic violence is it's every day, every shift. Child abuse, substance abuse. I know we've talked about heroin, the heroin epidemic. It's a substance abuse. Alcoholism. We have people here that are fighting against that every day. These are things that are important issues for LaPorte County, and that's really what I want to focus on. So I don't mean to not answer that question, but I want to make sure we stay on focus on really what this race is about. So that's my response to that. Thank you.
John, do you need another 60 seconds? Steve?
I'd like to make one other comment. We've talked a little bit about police militarization and the equipment and things that they have that gets out of hand sometimes across the country, and we want to be sure that doesn't happen here. The only good thing I can see from militarization is in in our defense against these things. Yes, that's pretty extreme, but when you look back the last few years of the way things have been going, I have a great concern that they're going to get worse. I can't tell you what it's going to be like 4, 5, 10 years from now, but I don't think it's going to get much better in the way, and the big thumb of the federal government coming down on us. So in that respect, this militarization could be a good thing for a resource to protect the community as a whole rather than used against the community. And that's my thoughts on that.
Al, you need 60 seconds.
No, thank you.
Okay. Since we started this second segment, I should have, before we got started again, I should mention the fact that the Porte County Patriots are sponsoring our event tonight. Some of you may have come in after we got started. I'm Ron Miller from WEFM Radio, and I'm going to introduce the three candidates again, and then we'll get to our next question. On my far right is John Boyd. He's the Republican candidate for LaPorte County Sheriff. In the center is Steve Osbourn. He is the Libertarian candidate for LaPorte County Sheriff. And on my closest left, right, is Al, wait a minute, this guy right here. This is Al Lott. He's the Democratic candidate for LaPorte County Sheriff. And we thank you all for being here. Let's get to our next question. Steve, this is for you. Another two-part question. Some people have seen the militarization of our police departments as clouding the lines between police and soldiers. Images of police looking like military personnel and SWAT teams being used for serving warrants have many concerned that there may soon be no way to distinguish the difference between the two. What are your views on this subject? The second part of the question, the acquisition of the MRAP by the Michigan City Police Department has come under some scrutiny. Some police departments across the nation have decided to return the vehicle. If you were presented the opportunity to acquire an MRAP in the same manner as Michigan City for the county, would you? Why or why not?
Okay, the first part, the militarization, we've discussed that a little bit here tonight already. Specifically, they wanted to know, though.
The question says, what are your views on the subject of police looking like military personnel and SWAT teams being used to serve warrants? Have many concerned there may soon be no way to distinguish the difference between the two.
Yeah, the police departments have changed a lot over the years, and just in the last 30 or 40 years, I believe it started with Los Angeles, coming up with the SWAT team, Special Weapons and Tactics, which has unfortunately become necessary in some cases because of the nature of the world that we're living in, the weapons that the bad guys are armed with. There is all kinds of reasoning to train our police officers, obviously, to be able to handle some of these situations. However, paramilitary is just like paramedic. I want to be sure we get the designation correct here. A paramedic can do things, out in the field that a doctor is directing him to do, and paramilitary is like the military is military-like in the way they act, the equipment they have, the responses they make, and it's in training. And I read something here in this report about a firearms instructor. Al here is a firearms instructor. I'd be interested to hear if he comments about this, whether he heard this or not. But in some conference here in the nation recently, a firearms guy was talking up about the militarization and how they are a commanding presence and get people to do what they want you to do. So this is a growing problem. It's a resource, but it's being abused in a lot of cases, and I want to be sure that we don't get to that point in LaPorte County. Now, presented with the case to buy an MRAP, or not buy an MRAP, but pay for the expenses to get it delivered, no, I would not go for that. The MRAPs, I understand it, each one's a little bit different. You got to have a guy that's thoroughly familiar, checked out with it, to be able to drive the thing. They're not safe, especially if you're responding to an emergency with it. Yeah, it's kind of nice to have if you had a situation that you really had to have one to get some people out of a neighborhood, but it's not like we're Chicago, not that it can't get worse, and not that we don't need the tools, but you need to be in control of that. Your control is only every 4 years, though. The control after that is one of these three guys right here. So who's going to really pull in the reins on these things if it becomes necessary to be sure that they're not abused?
Yeah, the question, two-part question. Some people have seen the militarization of our police departments as clouding the lines between police and soldiers. Images of police looking like military personnel and SWAT teams being used for serving warrants have many concerned that there may soon be no way to distinguish the difference between the two. What are your views on this subject? The second part, the acquisition of the MRAP by the Michigan City Police Department has come under some scrutiny. Some police departments across the nation have decided to return the vehicle. If you were presented the opportunity to acquire an MRAP in the same manner as Michigan City for the LaPorte County Sheriff's Department, would you? Why or why not?
I'll do the MRAP first. In regards to that, I've been hit with that question numerous times campaigning. I would not be in favor of actually even of acquiring an additional one for LaPorte County. Going back, it's all about working together, working with the other agencies in the county. If and when, hopefully it doesn't, a situation arises where we would need something to that magnitude, I know that we can count on Michigan City Police Department to be there. So that's in regards to that. There's no sense in us spending more tax dollars to do, whether it's for delivery or the maintenance or the training of an officer to operate that vehicle. In regards to the militarization of in our society, you know, growing up as a kid, I thought I lived in Mayberry. And it may not have been, I don't know. But that's an attribute to the law enforcement officers that were working each day. Because it may have been crazy, I don't know. But growing up as a kid, I didn't feel that way. There's a lot of you here I went to school with, and I think I've had conversation with many of those, and I think we all feel that way. And we're all trying to want to go back to that for our kids. So, with that being said, that's an attribute, again, back to the law enforcement officers that were active back then, and there's some in here today, so thank you for that. But, today, things have changed. In my 20 years, there's retirees here that have started back in the 60s. I see it back there. Things have changed. And, you know, there are times when we are hit with opposition, very aggressive opposition. And when that happens, my question back to the public, do you want us to be prepared? I'm a law enforcement officer. I train at the academy. I train firearms. I have done it for 15 years. I teach at the academy. So, do you want the protection? Do you want us to be there? Because I know right now there are officers in here, every one of these guys, I know that I can count on them to be here, be there, for you, if we are met in that position. So, you know, as far as what we look like when we do that, why does that matter? It doesn't matter. So, that's my stand on that. Thank you.
John, would you like me to repeat the question?
You better so I don't miss anything.
Some people have seen the militarization of our police departments as clouding the lines between police and soldiers. Images of police looking like military personnel and SWAT teams being used for serving warrants have many concerned that there may soon be no way to distinguish the difference between the two. What are your views on this subject? The second part, the acquisition of the MRAP by the Michigan City Police Department has come under some scrutiny. Some police departments across the nation have decided to return the vehicle. If you were presented the opportunity to acquire an MRAP in the same manner as Michigan City for the LaPorte County Sheriff's Department, would you? Why or why not?
Well, there is a big difference between police officers that police our community and our soldiers. We're dealing with our citizens, not enemy combatants. That being said, we owe a lot of our technology, a lot of our equipment to the military. They've been a great proving ground and a training ground for us. As sheriff, you've got a huge responsibility. You have to send men and women in harm's way when everybody else is running the other way or police officers are running to that danger. You have to well equip them. You make a pledge that at the end of each shift, the end of each call out, that they're going to go home to their families. And that rests very heavily on the heart of an administrator and ultimately the sheriff as well. I want to make sure that my men and women are equipped so they don't become part of the problem. They're part of the solution. Does it matter to you if emergency response team comes to your home, if heaven forbid you've got a home invasion and maybe you're being held hostage, or you're the victim of a violent crime, what that officer looks like when he arrives at your home? The difference between the military and us is our gear says police or sheriff on it, and it's well marked. We're not soldiers. This is something that we can't take lightly. As far as the MRAP is concerned, and I've had a number of conversations, 3 times a week I have lunch with the chief and the assistant chiefs of the Michigan City Police Department so we can exchange notes and we can stay on the same page with what's going on in LaPorte County. And we talk about the MRAP. The MRAP is a defensive tool. It's not a tank, as some purport in social media or even in some forms of media. You only have to go back about 12 years and you can look in the archives of the Michigan City News Dispatch and you can see, well, there was an officer that responded to a domestic violence call in Michigan City and he was met with a shot to the face. And then when officers came to rescue him, they were met with gunfire. And then the suspect set fire to his home. And the Michigan City Fire Department arrived to try to put the fire out and try to rescue the officer that was injured in the line of duty as he lay there. And the picture on the front page of the Michigan City News Dispatch is Michigan City policemen with ballistic shields holding them up with firemen standing behind them with their fire hoses trying to put out the fire. Had they had an MRAP then, they wouldn't have had to have those Michigan City firemen in harm's way. I look at the MRAP as being a regional tool. I'd love to have a helicopter here in LaPorte County. We just can't justify it. So we have this regional tool that's stationed at the Lake County Sheriff's Office. If we need the helicopter, we call the Lake County Sheriff's Office and they're happy to bring it over. We'd love to have a bomb squad here in LaPorte County, and most of their technology is a result of what's been developed in the military. But we can't justify it here, so we have a regional tool. If we need it, we call upon the Porter County Bomb Squad. We called them several weeks ago to come over and assist us. The MRAP is a regional tool for all of law enforcement in Northwest Indiana, and it will be a resource for us as well. But no, I can't justify having an MRAP here in LaPorte County, and I wouldn't get one.
Just briefly, this ACLU report of the responding police departments that they had that used SWAT teams for various things, only about 7% were for barricaded subject, hostage, active shooter. All the rest was for warrants or things like that. That years ago we didn't used to do that. Yes, once in a while you're going to have a situation, and I don't want somebody going into a situation not being prepared. They've changed the way that we respond to school shooters now. Now, yes, the police officers run to the trouble while people are running away. That's how you handle this. There's been a change in law enforcement in that respect. That's what you do, and you better be equipped to handle that. Those are the situations, not the warrants, not the coming looking for something. There's no reason to storm someone's house with a battering ram for a $50 drug deal. That just doesn't make any sense to me, and we're losing the drug war as it is.
Al, do you have any additional comments? Okay.
The one thing that I think you, the public, should remember is we're all law-abiding citizens in here, but we, at the times when we deal with these people that are not, they don't have any rules, and we have all the rules. So why not have us be better equipped to handle the situation? And it's, again, that goes back to the service that we're trying to provide for you. As a sheriff, I want to make sure all these men and women that are going to be working for the sheriff's office to be going home to their families at the end of the day. So that's so ever important to me, and I know that's important to you guys. Wouldn't be here otherwise. So thank you.
This one is for Al. Single point question. The subject of putting the inmates at the county jail to work on projects like roadside garbage pickup and snow removal and other duties that the county may have limited funds to accomplish has been around for a while. Would such an endeavor be something you would be willing to make happen?
Actually, I think it's a great idea. It's a good question. There's two things you can gain by that. We can help clean up our streets, our along the roadways, or whatever the task that they've been assigned to do. It would be a good thing for our community about beautifully making it more pretty or beautiful, whatever you want to, your verbiage you want to use. Secondly, incarceration does not teach anybody to stop the action that put them in there in the first place. So, if we can teach these male inmates to, I'm assuming only because of resources, male inmates, to get up every day, they have to eat their meal. Then they are ready to go each day to go out and do their service, whatever they're going to do that day. It teaches them responsibility. They may not have had that in their life as growing up, and that's not their fault. we can do that. It's a service we can provide to them. Again, the whole idea about the whole reason we exist, we have laws, why I put people in jail, for lack of terms, isn't so much that we want to put people in jail, it's about we want to make people need to be accountable to their actions and obey the laws of the land. And the whole plan is that we want them to be productive people in our communities. So we can have, it would be a two-edged sword, or however you want to word it, so it can work out good for everybody. So.
Sure. The subject of putting the inmates at the county jail to work on projects like roadside garbage pickup and snow removal and other duties that the county may have limited funds to accomplish has been around for a while. Would such an endeavor be something you would be willing to make happen?
Yes, absolutely I would. I think it's a great program. It is somewhat manpower intensive though, because you can't send the offenders, and of course they would be nonviolent offenders, offenders that aren't a risk to reoffending society when they're out on this work-release crew, but you have to send supervision out with them. I think it's an excellent idea, and I think we can expand upon it. However, you can't expand upon it too much because it is so manpower intensive. They have to have supervision. But what I would propose is working with our prosecutor, working with our judges as an alternative to incarceration. Because all too often, like you, I read the newspaper, I take personal interest in the cases that I've had over the years, and I see that somebody that's been convicted of an offense, say, that is rather high profile, or maybe it's an offense in which I was the arresting officer, investigating officer, and I see that the judge finds them guilty and fines them $1 plus $73 court cost. I think we need to put them to work. We need to get more than $1 out of them. I think we need to send them out to our beaches and clean them up. I think we need to send them to our playgrounds and clean our playgrounds up, and our streets, and remove graffiti. You get caught spray painting graffiti, your sentence ought to be removing the graffiti that not only you put on the schools, in the buildings, in the playgrounds, but the graffiti that everybody else that didn't get caught put on those viaducts and schools and playgrounds as well. So I'm all in favor of alternatives to incarceration. I think what we ought to have in our jails are our violent offenders, those that are a risk to society. And if we have the violent offenders in our jail, I think it would be too much of a liability to bring them back out into your neighborhoods and your communities.
Steve, would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure, go ahead.
The subject of putting the inmates at the county jail to work on projects like roadside garbage pickup and snow removal and other duties that the county may have limited funds to accomplish has been around for a while. Would such an endeavor be something you would be willing to make happen?
I would. I like the idea of that, always have. However, I think it was Al that mentioned that can also be a double-edged sword, or maybe it was John. You have to be very careful. These guys have nothing to do all day right now except figure out how to get out. So you want to be sure that you're not helping in any way the plan there. But yes, we need these people to get out once in a while and do some of these community service projects so that they can become a working member of society. The chances of rehabilitation hopefully are good, and these are things that can help because we need to make good citizens. There's also technology that can be used, maybe in conjunction with the courts, to get some of these nonviolent offenders out of the jail so that we're not spending your tax dollars and trying to keep them there when there's other less expensive technologies that can be used to keep track of them. On the other hand, we also need to be careful that we're not putting them into situations that is going to cause more problems because of another offense or something. So yes, I would support things of that nature in conjunction with those who know the prisoners the best as to which ones to choose, because the sheriff isn't always going to know that. He's going to have to depend on the jailers and the jail supervisors to find those candidates who are most likely to behave themselves, to benefit from it, and to work hard.
How would you like an additional 60 seconds?
Sure.
Just real quick, when I worked back in the jail, there were inmates that had more seniority than I did. It kind of sounds funny, but it's true. What is the problem with that? They're repeat customers. So again, we got to look at these different, what do I call them, programs that we could use, and this leads me to our drug treatment courts, and our veterans court. These are good alternatives to incarceration. These are people, obviously, that wouldn't be in this program because they're going to be doing their drug courts and their veterans court. I support those programs very, very much. And if you've ever listened to the veterans talk about it, I've recently attended a program where a veteran was actually, he was the actual graduate. And it'll make you think. They provided the service for us to be here tonight, and for us to give that back to them so they can be a functional person in the society, it's a worthwhile endeavor. So the whole idea of incarceration, just locking people up, is not going to be the answer entirely.
John, would you like another 60 seconds?
No, thank you.
Okay, Steve?
I would just like to...
Your mic's not on.
I see that, thank you.
Get it now.
I would just like to mention the justice assistance grants. I'm not sure if the county, unfortunately, is taking advantage of those or not, but Al mentioned the various courts and things. This is a program that can be used for law enforcement, for drug purposes, or it can be used for treatment. And these treatment uses are very, very low. It's also contained in this ACO report. The counties and the jurisdictions are not taking advantage of that part of the grants. They're putting it towards equipment and things like that, and other law enforcement training, which is fine, but there isn't very much at all going to treatments. So we're going to get those repeat offenders. We're going to get them who with more seniority than some of the jailers. So we need to be sure that we're utilizing the assistance programs that are out there and available.
All right, the next question is a four-part question, and they're relatively short, so I think the best way, because we're going to start with John, I think I'll read all four of them, and then if you want me to read the individual ones so we can try to squeeze all of this into 3 minutes, we'll see how we do this. The first question is, what do you feel the biggest challenge facing the Sheriff's Department at this time? The second question, how do you define public safety? What practices will you implement to help ensure it? Number three, what is one characteristic that sets you apart from your opponents? And number four, what would be one of your possible downfalls as sheriff, and how do you plan to compensate for it?
Okay, help me back to the first one.
Okay. What do you feel is the biggest challenge facing the Sheriff's Department at this time?
Well, I think the biggest issue facing the Sheriff's Department and the community is our heroin problem. It is absolutely an epidemic, and I don't mean to sound like a doom and gloom guy, but unless you've got your head buried in the sand, it is an epidemic here in LaPorte County. It's not a problem to identify it. Anybody can identify the problems. It's what are you going to do about it?
Amen.
We need to stop talking about the issues we have here in LaPorte County, and we need to start doing something about it. How do we do that? We involve the public, we involve community service organizations, we involve faith-based organizations, we involve the courts, we collaborate with law enforcement, call in additional resources, we get treatment that is readily available to our substance abusers. We treat them like they're members of our society and not castaways. We get them into treatment, we get them back here, we set up support networks for them because they fight those demons each and every day. We have a strategic plan that we need to put into place as to how we're going to deal with this, and that'll start the day after the election, not January 1st or after I start to learn the ropes a couple years down the road.
Second part, how do you define public safety and what practices will you implement to help ensure it?
That's a tough question to answer because it's very broad. The bottom line is public safety is about keeping people safe. And what are you going to do to keep people safe? What plans are you going to implement? We're going to continue to do it the way we've been doing, or are we going to evolve like most other law enforcement agencies have? This is 2014, soon to be 2015. You need to get a command staff that's involved. You need to rally the community behind you, because a community that rallies behind their police department and is supportive, they find that the police department is more receptive to the community and their feelings and the direction that they want from their sheriff's office.
I'll combine 3 and 4. What is one characteristic that sets you apart from your opponents? Which one of your possible downfalls would be as sheriff, and how do you plan to compensate for it?
The attribute that sets me apart, I would say, would either be my experience or my passion for the job. I absolutely love what I do, and that is evidenced by my work product and what I do within our community, in our communities throughout LaPorte County. And my biggest downfall would be the fact that I probably don't delegate enough. The reason that I don't delegate is because my executive captain that I work so closely with and some of the other members of the command staff are busy as well. And I don't expect them to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself. A sheriff, though, the sheriff absolutely has to delegate more. I realize that. But you need to have a good, reliable command staff in place, and you need to start telling your command staff, this is what you expect from them, and this is what we expect you to get done.
First question, and then we'll take them as we did with John. What do you feel the biggest challenge facing the sheriff department is at this time?
Well, I'd have to agree with the drug problem. I disagree a little bit with how we're going about, or how we may go about solving that. I know you're not going to believe this, but I was raised a Latter-day Saint, and I've never had any recreational liquor. In fact, I was surprised when I found out that some cough syrups have alcohol. Other than that, I've never had that. And I don't understand why we can't raise a generation of that. Yes, that's extreme. You're not going to find many cases where, you know, somebody's never had a drink before, but in my case, that's so. But there are other things that the kids aren't learning that are leading to this. And one of them is, now you put a Pepsi in front of me, and it's going to be gone in a couple minutes. You put a chocolate bar there, it's going to be gone. I have, you know, my issues still, as anybody does. My chocolate saying is, the proper utensil for eating milk chocolate is a shovel. So we have those as we go through life. We have to teach the kids that there are corporations out there that want to hook you on these things, and we have to teach them how to moderately deal with these things, and maybe a little more naturally will come the fact that, hey, I don't want to give up my free will. I don't want to give up, you know, the control that I have of myself. So I think that's one way to approach the biggest problem in the county. Not that there aren't other ways to deal with the drug problem, but I think we're missing the boat on some of the principal things that we need to be concerned about.
How do you define public safety, and what practices will you implement to help ensure it?
Well, I'll tell you what, I drive a lot in my business, working on transmitters, going out to some of these tower sites, and I see all kinds of atrocious driving, and I wish that, you know, I was in an unmarked squad sometimes. On the other hand, I wouldn't want my guys writing you a ticket for something that they let their neighbor get away with last week. So yes, we have to be safe. There's an awful lot of us out there that are going through stop signs like crazy. I mean, it's very strange. I don't know why suddenly we're having this trouble, but public safety is mostly when you're out on the street, and we need to be sure that you're safe. And if at least pulling you over and giving you a warning or something, but we've got to try and change some of the habits in this county.
We have a few seconds left. What is one characteristic that sets you apart from your opponents? What would be one of your possible downfalls as sheriff, and how do you plan to compensate for it?
Well, my downfall is I talk too much, and if I was sheriff, they would envy the fact that we have this timekeeper here keeping me quiet. And I'm sorry, the one before that was?
What is one characteristic that sets you apart from your opponents?
I'll try and answer that for my 1 minute.
All right, Al, the first question, what do you feel the biggest challenge facing the sheriff's department is at this time?
Well, to say the heroin problem or epidemic, because I agree with that, is the underlying one issue. We have several issues. The heroin problem is one. I talked about it earlier. Substance abuse. Alcoholism is we see that every day. The heroin problem, you can see every day, but the heroin or the alcoholism is something that we see every day, every shift. And we respond to that, and there's tragic things that fall from that. So you have a substance abuse problem, but with that, I just touched on it, domestic violence. Anything in this world today, if you read the paper, turn the radio on, ESPN, I can't believe you can watch sports now, and now they're talking about substance or domestic abuse policies now they have to put in place. It is a prevalent problem in this community, nationwide as well. So we have multiple things that are going on, and we need to address all of them. We need to be diligent. We need to be accountable. We need to go to work and start working on these problems.
How do you define public safety? What practices will you implement to help ensure it?
Well, I just, defining public safety is to be accountable, approachable, accessible to the public. After all, you guys pay our wage. We are here to serve you and to provide a safe community to live in and prosper.
Final question. What is the one characteristic that sets you apart from your opponents? What would be one of your possible downfalls as sheriff, and how do you plan to compensate for it?
Well, the idea of approachability, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but the idea of approachability, that's what sets me apart from both candidates. I can talk to anybody. Like I said, I'm a proud blue-collar citizen of this county, and I've got a passion for people. I got a passion for my job, I got a passion for people, and it's probably because I'm raising 2 girls. So I've always said it's the best thing that's happened to me. And the idea of wanting to help people is really what drives me each day. So, but to do that, I have to be approachable. So I feel like I am. And I hear it each day when I actually go to work. I hear it each day as I'm campaigning throughout this past year, more than a year now. And I pride myself on it. As far as a weakness, it's probably impatience. When I get an idea that I want to do something, I want it done. And I realize now with government, it's not always going to work like that. So that'll be tough for me. But the idea of being diligent to get the job done is what you can rest assured that come January 1, when I'm your sheriff, that we're going to do that. Thank you.
John, you have another 60 seconds. Steve, you have your last minute.
Yes, I do, thank you. I could sustain any 3 of us, any of the 3 here being sheriff. I can sustain that. I have faith in these 2 guys, I have faith in myself. What you're going to get with me is a civil libertarian as sheriff. You're going to get a good administrator who's had a lot of experience, which is what the job mostly calls for, who has some law enforcement background as well, and I'm a fairly good researcher. I've done a lot of research. I wish I had more time for it, but I'm in an intensive business, and so I don't get as much time for that as I'd like. But you're going to get a civil libertarian that would be your chief law enforcement officer in the county. So that's what sets us apart, but I don't think that there's going to be a mistake in any direction that we finally decide to go.
Al, would you like another minute?
I'm fine, thank you.
Final question. This is for Steve. The federal government offers the police departments money in different forms, grants, equipment, all presented as a no strings attached transaction. We all know there is no such thing as no strings attached transaction. Participation in a federal program to receive the money is a slippery slope and can have unintended consequences. Arizona Sheriff Arpaio, who has been investigating the president's documents, has recently found his DOJ military equipment being recalled. Are you willing to blindly accept federal funds?
No, I've been awake to this as well for many years. We need to use the resources that we can, and it's going to be tough to say no to certain things, but I'll be able to do that. Now, I'm not too sure about what the ramifications are going to be, so you're going to have to decide that if your sheriff does that and says no, and the federal government decides, well, we're going to do this or we're going to do that, you're going to have to sustain the fact that the sheriff did that for you, because we're just not going to let them impose. So ultimately the decision is yours, but again, like I said a little while ago, your chance of control is every 4 years, and then you lose it until the next 4 years. And so yes, I can say no. I can't necessarily protect us from the ramifications of that. We will do the best we can, but yes, I am not going to accept blindly federal funds. Yes, there's a lot there that can be used for assistance, like I mentioned a minute ago, the JAG funds. We need better treatment options. We don't need to be throwing these kids into jail. We need to get them straightened out and give them some treatments, and those are the kinds of solutions that we need to go forward with, not some of these other things that have failed in the past.
Now the question is, are you willing to blindly accept federal funds? I'm not going to read the whole question again.
To answer that question, blindly accept the funds? Absolutely not. We need to educate ourselves on the type of money that we're going to get, whether a grant or any type of federal funding of that nature. So if we're going to accept that, we would have to educate ourselves and see what's going to entail for us. Having a little exposure with grants and a little bit that I do know about grant writing, there are stipulations to that. They give you money, but then there's requirements that they have for their monies, which makes sense. But again, to blindly accept the money, I would not be in favor of that.
John, are you willing to blindly accept federal funds?
No, and let me tell you my experience. I've got 15 years, 18 years of grant writing experience, and most of the grants that I've written have come through the federal government. There's not a grant out there that doesn't have some form of stipulation. It's written right into it. You have performance evaluators. You have to answer, at least on a quarterly basis, as to how you're spending the money. And you know from the get-go, as someone that has researched a number of federal grants, exactly what the stipulations are. There have been a number of grants that I've opted not to write because the stipulations were too stringent. They wanted us to do things that weren't acceptable. I didn't think that it was agreeable to what we do here in LaPorte County, so we bypassed it and went on. But with that being said, I think federal grants can be extremely valuable. What a great way to recapture your tax dollars and bring it back here to LaPorte County. Why should our federal tax dollars go out to Los Angeles, California, or Houston, Texas, and battle their issues, or Washington, D.C., where they can flush it down the toilet? Why not bring it back here to LaPorte County? And I think grants can be an extremely valuable resource, and it can supplant our budget, because we have an $8.4 million budget, but when you consider what we do with our budget, it's not a whole lot. 73% of our budget is tied up in salary. That leaves the remaining percentage to do what we do on a daily basis, whether it be put gasoline in our police cars, or buy a new copier, or buy paper goods that go in our copier, or buy a new computer system, or feed our canine dogs. So we've got to capture as much money, your tax dollars, and bring it back here to LaPorte County as we can. So to blindly accept federal government aid or state aid, absolutely not, because I know they come with parameters, and we know what the parameters are well before we accept that money.
Sometimes the strings that are attached aren't stringent enough. In this report, I noted that the ACLU found that the only requirements for police departments getting a lot of this equipment, which again can be useful to protect the police officers in situations where they're properly used, but the only requirement that's been there has been for proper inventory and proper accounting of where the equipment goes. You can even ship it to another police department so long as it's accounted for and that's approved by your state coordinator. But there's been a lot of misuse of this equipment where people have died. There's no strings for that. They don't have any requirements for that. So yes, we need to look at everything very carefully so that we're not doing things blindly. But you should know that there are some times that there aren't stringent enough strings on things and things are being abused.
Al, please say. John? All right, we have reached the end of our questions, so we're going to, are we going to allow them to make a couple of brief statements, or are we going to close out here?
Yeah, we get a couple of brief
Okay,
statements.
we'll start, whoops, careful. Why don't we start with Al and brief statement closing out.
One of my opponents here has more experience or more administrative, one of my opponents has more administrative experience than I do. His own statements, and I agree. But that experience has given him the opportunity to put some things into place that haven't happened. So during my 20 years at the sheriff's office, I've worked, again, I've talked about this, I've worked from the bottom up. I've worked with the men and women each day, and currently still do, working the midnight shift. So I know what needs to happen. I know what works. I know what's not working. I know where we can make some improvements, and I know how to address public concerns. At the end of the day, the bottom line is, none of us, including myself, has any experience being your sheriff. An incumbent only would be able to do that. I think a sheriff needs to be accountable and accessible and approachable. to the public. That's the service that we should provide. And I think the idea of approachability is what sets me apart from these other candidates. I hear it each day when I'm out working, walking the streets, talking to people, each day while I'm out campaigning. That's what they want. They want people, a sheriff, that's going to answer their concerns and their questions. We haven't touched on all this stuff, but I have plans to put town hall meetings into place. And such as this. I don't know how well attended they will be, but we're going to do them. They'll be advertised. We're going to hear the concerns of the people and the public so we can bring that service back to them, to you. At the end of the day, this campaign is not about me. It's about us. It's about us working together as a community with your sheriff's office. You need a sheriff that can connect with people to bridge the growing gap with law enforcement in our community. We've talked about several things this evening. Some of the candidates, I'm not sure who brought it up. Turn on your TV. There's a whole unfortunate incident happened in Ferguson. You know, I hope that it doesn't happen here. But you never know. There's no guarantees in life. And I would much rather have the community on my side when an unfortunate incident or something like that should happen. Because I think a lot of the things that are happening after the fact maybe not been so aggressive or negative. So at the end of the day, I'm asking you for your vote. We need a sheriff that can connect with the public in order to help solve LaPorte County's problems. So I'm asking you, I'm Al Ott. I'm your Democratic candidate for the sheriff's race here in this fall election. November 4th, it's right around the corner. So I respectfully ask for your vote. And I do also want to push the whole idea of early voting. It is happening now. It's open Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. We have 2 courthouses, which is a very rare thing nationwide. We have 2 courthouses in this county. Take advantage of them. They're there, they're open. And also the next 3 Saturdays from 8 to 3, early voting is occurring. So go out, educate yourself as you're doing now, and you can early vote. Take advantage of it, and thank you for your time tonight. Again, thank you to the LaPorte Patriots, excuse me. Again, it's a good event. Thank you.
John, you're next. You want to make some closing remarks?
There are a lot of issues that we have here in LaPorte County. Again, we can talk about it all we want. Let's start doing something about it. It's going to take strong leadership to deliver us from this. And I agree with Al. He's absolutely right. Your sheriff does need to be approachable. I'm proud of the fact that I'm approachable. I'm approachable. I did the DARE program. It's at the time, President Clinton, when I was doing the DARE program, said that it was the #1 community policing program in the nation at the time. He touted it. He funded it. Because it was such a great way for law enforcement to connect with society and the small communities. LaPorte County is very, very unique. We're so diverse, demographically, geographically. The concerns that people have in La Crosse are so much different than the concerns that the people in Michigan City have. Likewise, the concerns of the people in Hudson Lake are much different than the concerns they have in Hannah. The sheriff needs to be acutely aware of the differences and be in tune with what's going on in these communities, and that's something that I'm proud that I've been in tune with throughout my career. I'm a public information officer at the sheriff's office. Not a week goes by where I'm not meeting with a community organization. Maybe it's the Wills Township Historical Society. There's a group of 12 older ladies that get together when I go in when they're having a coffee, and I talk to them about the sheriff's department. Or today I was with the Rotary Club here in LaPorte, telling them about one of the programs that LaPorte County Sheriff's Office does. So I'm in touch with our community. I believe in our community, I'm a member of our community, and I raised my family in our community. The tough issues that we have here in LaPorte County, the heroin issue, substance abuse, keeping our kids safe in schools, our lack of communication with the public, and our lack of accountability, we need to restore that. We need to have plans in place. We need to involve the community. We need to have the community rally around and support their sheriff's office. This is a very pivotal time. It's not about who's a Republican, who's a Libertarian, who's a Democrat. It's not about your party. It's not about who has the most signs. It's about who has a plan, who's got a proven record, who's already started to work towards bettering their community, And who has the experience to deliver us out of these issues that we're having here in LaPorte County? I ask for your support in the upcoming November 4th election, because I've got the experience, I've got the integrity, I've got the background, I've got the desire and the passion to do the job. You're going to have more than a full-time sheriff if you elect me as your sheriff. I thank you for coming out tonight and taking an active interest in what's going on in LaPorte County, and in particular with your sheriff's office. I thank the LaPorte Patriots. Thank you for organizing this event, Lou. You've done a nice job. It's been an honor to be here with you tonight. Thank you for your attentiveness, and thank you for entertaining the three of us. We're very fortunate, and I'm very honored to be running with these gentlemen. Al and I have been friends for a long time. I'm honored to be going through this process with him. I think the world of his family. Al, you took a chance on me back in 1988. You hired me at the LaPorte Police Department, and I'm forever indebted to you for that. Thank you for taking a chance. But Ken Layton, you took a chance on me as well. And if it weren't for you, Larry Trueblood, I wouldn't be here today. So thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to disagree with John just a little bit here on the politics of it all, because when it comes down to it, the two major parties, they're going to feel the pressure of being one of the most powerful positions in the county, and you can't ignore that. So I'm going to do something just a little bit different here. I like a well-written screenplay, a well-written movie script, and I'm going to quote from a couple here. So. One of them is It's a Wonderful Life. And this is the scene where George Bailey is trying to convince the board of the Bailey Building and Loan to let the organization stay. And he's giving his speech, and Potter, who's sitting back, he's the richest man in town, and oh, he's yawning. Nothing George says makes any difference at all. It's kind of like what we get from the Republicans and the Democrats in this country. And that's because they're in power. So, no, okay, yeah, I hear your complaint. But George then says something that really gets to Potter. You can see it in his face. It's very good acting. He says, we need this measly little one-horse building and loan, if only to have some place to go where people don't have to crawl to Potter. Now he's scared because his facade has just been exposed. So I want to give you an idea here that I know a lot of you are diehard Republicans, diehard Democrats, and there's nothing wrong with that. Been there, done that, and I respect you for it. And I know that you're going to vote that way. But if you're unhappy with the way that your party has responded to you, you may have withheld money from them, but they're going to get the money, wherever. So that's not a good way to protest if you don't like what they're doing. The only thing that they can't legally get back is if you vote for a third party. Then they start to stand up and take notice. The Libertarians are starting to get up there, and that's a good way to protest. Now, I realize that in this race you may have, one of three favorites here, but consider the fact that they're yawning at you. The parties in control are yawning at your complaints. It is politics, and it's time to show them something a little different. So if I can, let me quote a couple of other things real quick. In The Natural, when Roy Hobbs is having dinner with the coach on his first day there, the coach is trying to get him to open up because nobody knows nothing about him. Sound familiar? They want to know, he wants to know what he's like, and he says, he's avoiding his questions. And he says, look, you play me, you'll get the best I got. So I just wanted to quote that one as well. I also appreciate you coming out here tonight. I thank the LaPorte County Patriots for sponsoring this. It's well attended. I'm thankful for your live hearts that you care enough. I know that some of you have a favorite candidate. But let me close with a quote from Anne Shirley. Megan Follows playing Anne Shirley. If you knew how much I really wanted to say and didn't, you'd give me some credit. Thank you very much for coming.
All right. Information for the candidates are all on the table over here. On behalf of the LaPorte County Patriots, I'd like to thank you for participating in the 2014 Sheriff's Candidates Debate. I hope this event was informative and shed some light on who the candidates are and what they stand for. I'd like to thank the candidates, John Boyd, Alad, and Steve Osbourn. A special thanks to Elizabeth Ward for all her help in making this event possible. Thanks to the Civic Auditorium for the venue. I thank you again for coming. Good night and drive safe.
Hey, pretty lady, how's it
You have been. I'm just catching up.